Okay, close your eyes for just a second. I want you to put yourself right in the sandals of an ancient Egyptian royal advisor. You are standing in the grand throne room, and you are literally watching your entire, supposedly invincible empire collapse in real time. The devastating hail from the previous plague has already completely shattered your infrastructure, and honestly, the tension in the room right now is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the historical text of Exodus 10, and we're going to see exactly how a superpower breaks from the inside out.
Listen to this frantic plea straight from the text, specifically Exodus 10, verse 7. Now, these aren't the Israelites complaining. These are Pharaoh's own servants, his trusted inner circle, the people whose literal full-time job is to nod and agree with him. And they are completely breaking rank. They're practically screaming at him, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" I mean, as an advisor, this is the moment of absolute heart-dropping desperation. They can clearly see what their own leader absolutely refuses to admit. The country is already functionally destroyed.
So let's get into part 1, the breaking point. Here's the historical setup for this crazy standoff. Moses has just strutted right back into the court, and he drops a massive threat, a plague of locusts. And we're not talking about a typical annoying little swarm here. We're talking about a swarm so severe, so relentless, that it is going to eat absolutely whatever the hail somehow miraculously spared. It's going to fill the very houses of the Egyptians. The text is so specific here. The Lord tells Moses to warn Pharaoh that the locusts will cover the face of the land so completely that no one will even be able to see the ground. They are going to devour every single tree growing in the field. And it's immediately after Moses delivers this chilling ultimatum and then just turns on his heel and walks out that the royal advisors completely lose their nerve. They actually force Pharaoh to bring Moses and Aaron back in for negotiations.
But wow, the negotiation is just an absolute train wreck. We've got a really stark contrast here. Moses lays out his demand plain and simple. Everyone goes. They have to go with their young and old, their sons and daughters, and all their flocks and herds to hold a feast to the Lord. But Pharaoh, he's still clinging to whatever tiny shred of leverage he thinks he has left. So he offers this incredibly stubborn counterproposal. He says, "No, go the men among you and serve the Lord." He actually accuses them of having some sort of evil purpose in mind and outright refuses to release the women, the children, and the livestock. Then the text explicitly states that Moses and Aaron are practically thrown out of Pharaoh's presence. If you're an advisor standing in that room, watching diplomacy crash and burn like this, your stomach just drops because you know exactly what is coming next.
That brings us to part 2, the unprecedented swarm. The doors slam shut. The negotiation is completely dead, and this horrifying wave of realization just washes over the royal court. The 8th plague is actually happening. But the arrival of the locusts wasn't instantaneous. It was this agonizing, drawn-out process. Just follow how the dread builds here. The Lord brings an east wind upon the land. And it doesn't just blow for an hour or two. It blows all that day and all that night. Just try to imagine the sheer psychological torture on the Egyptians, right? Laying awake in the dark, listening to that unnatural, relentless wind howling outside, knowing exactly what it's carrying toward them. When morning finally breaks, the wind delivers on its promise. A dense, unimaginably massive swarm of locusts, something the text notes had never been seen before and never would be again, settles over the entire country.
And the devastation hits, and it is total. The swarm literally darkened the sky. They completely consumed all the plants the hail had left behind. They ate all the fruit off the trees. They even poured into and filled the houses of all the servants and all the Egyptians. The text delivers this utterly devastating final summary of the situation. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, through all the land of Egypt. Think about that. The entire agricultural economy is completely 100% eradicated in a matter of hours.
Which leads us to part 3, a hasty, fleeting repentance.
Look, when your entire nation's food supply vanishes before lunch, even the absolute hardest of leaders crack. Pharaoh hastily scrambles to summon Moses and Aaron back, and he issues this incredibly desperate apology. He says, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore, forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me." Pay close attention to his words there. He doesn't just call it a plague of insects, does he? He literally calls it this death. The land is dead. He is utterly, completely broken in the face of this absolute agricultural collapse.
So Moses pleads with the Lord, and boom, the Lord shifts the wind to a very strong west wind. It violently lifts up the locusts and drives every single last one of them straight into the Red Sea. The text goes out of its way to note that not a single locust was left anywhere in the country. Okay, crisis momentarily averted, right? But then, we hit that tragic, totally maddening recurring refrain, "The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go." From an advisor's perspective in the room, this is sheer, unadulterated madness. The country is miraculously saved from the immediate swarm, but your king is ignoring the fundamental problem.
Moving right along to part 4, a darkness to be felt.
See that stubbornness? It invites the very next horror. And unlike the locusts, which came with this torturous 24-hour warning siren of an east wind, the 9th plague falls over Egypt immediately. No warning, no negotiation. Moses simply stretches out his hand toward heaven. The text uses a phrase here that is just absolutely chilling. It was a darkness to be felt. We are not talking about a heavy fog or a solar eclipse here. We are talking about a pitch, suffocating darkness that lasted for 3 full days. It was so oppressive, so unbelievably absolute, that it literally carried a physical weight. It paralyzed the entire nation on the spot.
The contrast presented here is just wild. On one hand, you've got the Egyptians. For 3 entire days, they could not even see one another. The text says no one even rose from his place. It's complete, absolute isolation, sensory deprivation, and total paralysis. But on the other hand, we have the Israelites. The text clearly states that all the people of Israel had light where they lived. So imagine you are a royal advisor. You are sitting in the pitch black, unable to even see your own hand in front of your face for 72 straight hours. The sheer terror and the stark realization of your own utter helplessness must have been completely suffocating.
Okay, finally, part 5, the final broken ultimatum. When the lights finally come back on, a highly agitated, completely cornered Pharaoh calls for Moses one last time, and it breaks down into this ultimate tense stalemate. Pharaoh actually yields slightly more than before. He says, okay, the little ones can go with the adults this time, but he demands that their flocks and herds must remain behind. Moses? He is completely unyielding. He states flat out that the livestock must go, saying famously, not a hoof shall be left behind. Moses explains that they need the livestock for sacrifices and burnt offerings, and honestly, they won't even know exactly what they need to serve the Lord until they get there.
And that's when Pharaoh just completely snaps. His heart is hardened once again, and he issues this bone-chilling, desperate death threat. "Get away from me. Take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die." Wow, this is it. This marks the complete and final end of all diplomatic negotiations. There are no more counteroffers coming. There is only this terrifying, hard line drawn right in the sand.
And Moses doesn't even blink. He hits back with this ominous, ice-cold acceptance of the threat. As you say, I will not see your face again. Think about being that advisor in the room one more time. You've lost your entire harvest. You've just sat in crippling, unnatural darkness for 3 days, and now your leader has just permanently severed the only line of communication with the man bringing these plagues, practically daring him to bring worse. Moses just accepts the terms, turns around, and walks out forever.
We've just watched an entire superpower completely self-destruct from the inside out. We've explored the structural collapse, the agricultural devastation, and the psychological paralysis of a nation, all through the eyes of the people who were forced to stand by and watch it happen. The advisors knew Egypt was ruined before the locusts even arrived, and yet they were still dragged through complete economic annihilation and absolute darkness anyway. So I have to leave you with this final thought to ponder. With negotiations entirely dead, the land utterly devoured, and the darkness lifted only to reveal a stubborn king issuing death threats, what horrifying precipice does a ruined Egypt now stand on? What in the world could possibly come next? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive into the source text has given you a vivid, entirely new understanding of this legendary historical collapse.